Hello there guys, this is the first of a literacy lesson for you. Now basically I'm going to film it in one go and then tell you the steps to go for it. You don't have to do this all in one day, you can spread it out across a week if you want to, okay? We would normally do literacy in 2 to 3 lessons a week, so you're more than welcome to stretch this across 2 to 3 days and work on it that way. Or indeed all 5 days if you really want to put some real effort into it, it's absolutely fine. But we're going to be looking at a book called Not Norman, okay? A goldfish story. Now, I love this book. It's one of my favourites, and it might be that I've possibly even read it to the children before. But I'm going to read it today on the video, okay? Then I'm going to show you a story map of the basic details of the story, okay? Now, it's quite a small map, so I will send a link to it on Pupil Asset as well, because it might not show up very well on the camera, okay? And then basically I'll talk you through the steps of how we will sort of pull the story apart and then put back together our own version of the story, okay? So, Not Norman. When I was given Norman, I didn't want to keep him. I wanted a different kind of pet. Not Norman. It's a bit fed up about that. I wanted a pet who could run and catch. Or one who could climb trees and chase a ball of string. A soft, furry pet to sleep on my bed at night. Not Norman. All Norman does is swim around and around and around and around and around and around and around. Not very interesting by the looks of things. That's it, Norman, I decide. I'm swapping you for a good pet. Norman doesn't move. Not even a fin twitches. He looks a bit nervous, to be honest, doesn't he? How can I swap him like this? No one will want a sorry-looking fish in a gunky bowl. It is a bit filthy there, isn't it? When I drop Norman into his nice clean bowl, he starts dipping and flipping, flapping his fins around. He looks so silly. I have to laugh. Don't think that just because you make me laugh I'm going to keep you, I tell him. Tomorrow you're going. Norman blows a stream of bubbles. The next day I take Norman to school with me. I plan to talk anyone, into taking him. On the way there we see my friend Will. Will has a really great dog and 7 puppies. How about swapping one of your pups for Norman, I ask. Who's Norman? Asks Will. My goldfish, I say. By the time I rescue Norman, half his water is gone. The dogs are all drinking out of the bowl. Poor old Norman, he looks very worried. So does he. I'm sorry, I tell Norman when we get to school. I'm really sorry. He just stares at me, all googly-eyed. It's filling him back up here with the water fountain from school. After break, I get a chance to speak to the class. Just as I start to talk about goldfish, Emily shouts, "Izzy's gone! Who let my snake loose?" How do you think they're going to feel about a snake loose in the classroom? Let's have a look. Everyone has run off. They're probably feeling quite scared at the thought of a snake possibly climbing up their trouser leg. Okay. Does anyone hear the story of how I got Norman? Does anyone even ask to hold his bowl? No. They're all jumping and screaming and chasing the snake. Not Norman. He's looking right at me. Thanks for listening, I tell him. How do you think he's feeling about Norman now? Do you think he still really doesn't like him? That afternoon we go to my music lesson. As soon as it's over, I'm taking Norman back to the pet shop. I take out my tuba and begin to play. Bom ba ba bom ba ba boo 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 bo bee. I glance over at Norman. He's swaying back and forth. Glue, glue, glug, glug, he mouths. Look, Norman's singing, I say. Pay attention, snaps Mr. Baker, and try to play the right notes. Look at Norman, though, he's having a great time singing away there. Mr. Baker makes me stay for extra practice. By the time my lesson is over, it's too late to go to the pet shop. Don't think that just because you like my music, I'm going to keep you, I tell Norman. He glugs. So it's too late to go to the pet shop, but I'm wondering if it hadn't been, would he have gone? I wonder how he's feeling about Norman now, do you think? Let's find out. That night, I'm sound asleep when screech, screech. What's that noise? Scratch, screech, screech. Yikes! There's something at the window. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spot. What does he spot? Let's have a look. Norman! He isn't scared. He isn't swimming around in circles either. He glugs and gives me a little wave. I'm not alone. Together, Norman and I slide open the curtains. It was just a broken tree branch scratching the window. Thanks for watching out for me, I tell Norman. Do you think he could take Norman back now? Do you think he still wants to get rid of him and swap him for a puppy? Let's have a look. On Saturday, I take Norman to the pet shop. Just like I said I would. I look at the cats and dogs and snakes and birds. I look at the hamsters and mice and the lizards too. They all look like really good pets, but they are not Norman. Of course they're not. He's good friends with Norman now. He can't possibly get rid of him. When I was given Norman, I wasn't sure that I wanted to keep him. But now, even if I could pick any pet in the whole world, I wouldn't swap him. Not Norman. There he is, and his little sign says, Norman, one amazing fish. So there's no way he could bring himself to swap Norman after that. He'd made a friendship with him. Okay, so this is what I'd like you to do with the story of Not Norman. Okay, I have drawn here, and it will be tricky to pick up on the camera, so I will, as I say, send it to you via the email service at school. But this is a story map, okay, and it's basically taking all the things that happened in the story of Not Norman and turning it into pictures like a pathway to tell the whole story. Okay, so to begin with, we have our character here. We never actually found out his name, did we? I'm going to call him Bert for now, just to make it easier, okay? So Bert was given Norman, and you can see, well, you will see from the link on the email that he's not very happy about it, okay? And then we follow our arrows to see that he's thinking about he wished he'd had a cat, okay, or maybe a dog. I wasn't quite up to drawing a dog, so we've just got a cat in there. So he's thinking about how he wished he'd had something else. Then we follow the arrow, which brings us back onto the page down here. Now, I would say what we've just seen is the beginning of the book, okay, where he's thinking about how he's got a gift of a goldfish and he just doesn't like it. Now, these next few pictures from here up to here, I would say is the middle of the story, okay? We looked at starts, middles and ends when we looked at the Incredible Book-Eating Boy. So it's a bit like that, breaking your story into 3 sections, okay? So the beginning, as we say, was him getting Norman but wishing he'd got something else. Now our middle here, I would say, is when he's starting to get to want Norman. He's still thinking about swapping him occasionally, but he keeps having a bit of a moment where he starts to warm to him and get to like him. So first of all, he's thinking about swapping him still, and there's no way he can swap him if he's in a dirty bowl. So I wrote dirty bowl here to remind me that all these bits on the bowl are the dirty bits. And then if you go across, he then cleans out the bowl with his rubber gloves on and his nets, okay? So although he's doing it because he wants to swap the fish, when he puts Norman back in the bowl, he seems to start to like the way Norman is glugging and he's very happy in his clean bowl, okay? So then we will follow the arrow back onto picture 5 here. Okay. Now he's still thinking about swapping him. He takes him to school and he tries to swap it for one of Will's puppies. Okay, he's still got that idea in his mind and he's saying swap up here with a question mark. Do you want to swap Will? But instead the dogs drink all of Norman's water, and actually Bert starts to worry about him. Oh my goodness, he needs saving. So he must be starting to like him. Following the arrow on, here he is playing his tuba in his music lesson, and he catches Norman singing along and glugging along, and he seems really happy about it. And so Bert starts to really like the fact that Norman likes his tuba playing. Then it's too late to go to the pet shop, so we follow the arrow on and it's bedtime. He's in bed and there's scratching and scratching at the window, and he's very nervous. But he looks over and he sees, right at the bottom of the picture, Norman. Norman's there. And he's not worried, and he's there with him, and he's not on his own, and he's so pleased to have Norman with him. So if we followed the last arrow, okay, and this is what I would call the end part of the book, okay, he's pleased to have Norman there with him in the scary moment in his bedroom at night. And then the last picture, going back to the pet shop, but he's saying, I love Norman. I'm not going to swap Norman. I've seen all these other animals, the lizards and the dogs and the cats, but I still want to keep Norman, okay? So this is what I would say was the end of our book, where he suddenly decides there's no way he's going to swap Norman. Not Norman, he's going to keep him, okay? So that will be your story map that you could draw on a piece of paper. You can do it with felt tip pens or anything you want to. Just quick sketches. It doesn't have to be amazing pictures, but ones that would help you tell the story. So if you were to go and see Dad when he comes home, or Mum when she comes home, and you want to tell her the story of Not Norman, you've got enough pictures on there with the arrows to tell you what comes next, and I've numbered them as well, 1, 2, 3, etc., to help out with the order, that you could tell the story again just based on your story map that you've drawn, okay? So that's why a story map is very helpful. Helps us remember a story. You can write any words on there that you might think you might forget, certain parts of the story, but the trick is not to write too many words on a story map. It's more about the pictures and the path that you are following, okay? So remember, in this story we had our start, where he got Norman and he didn't like him. Then our bigger middle bit, where he still wants to swap him, but he's starting to get to like him a bit more. And then the very end of our story, when he's so pleased to have him in the bedroom there to help him out with his scary moment. And then when he goes back to the pet shop, and then he just knows he wouldn't swap Norman, okay? So our start, our middle, and our end to our story. All stories have starts, middle and ends, and you can think about what they are whenever you're having a story at home with your parents, okay? So with our start, middle and end on our story map, what our next step would be, okay, and this could be over day 3 even, you could be replacing different pictures with ideas of your own from your own imagination, okay? So this is a fiction story. It's actually come out of Kelly Bennett's imagination, Not Norman, okay, because she was the author, the writer of Not Norman. But when we start to replace these pictures, you're creating your own fiction story with a start, a middle and an end, but out of your imagination. Okay, so what you will do is, and I don't have any post-it notes here with me because they're all at school, and you probably haven't got any at home either, but you can stick squares of paper over the top like flaps using sellotape at the top, okay, so that way you can still see what was going on underneath in Not Norman, but how you're replacing it yourself, okay? So you might say that you're not given a goldfish for your gift, okay, maybe you're given a pair of sensible shoes, okay, so you've been given a pair of really flat shoes. Maybe they're a bit brown, they're not red and glittery, and they're not high heels with bows on, Or maybe if you're not into red high heel shoes, they're not really fast running trainers with maybe Spider-Man on. They're really flat ones and they're quite boring, and maybe they're brown. Think of all these descriptive words for those shoes. So you would stick a paper flap over here with tape at the top with a new drawing on, okay, of maybe you, and in our model one that we're doing here, receiving a pair of flat, boring brown shoes, okay? Now, in the next picture, you wouldn't be dreaming of a cat instead of a pair of flat shoes in your thought bubble here. So you'd have your miserable face still, but you'd stick your flap over this thought bubble, and you'd have a different thought bubble where maybe you're dreaming of those ruby red high heels or those fast running trainers with a superhero on. So you would stick your flap over this one and use your own imagination to imagine what you would be dreaming of, okay? Then on picture 3, maybe you're looking at swapping those shoes with somebody, but you're thinking, oh, I can't possibly swap them because I've worn them out now to break them in and they've got a bit dirty. So maybe they're dirty like the fishbowl. So you'd stick a picture over the flap of the fishbowl with your shoes, but they're a bit dirty, okay? You'd walk through a puddle, maybe because you don't like them. Okay? And you're thinking, but if I want to swap these with somebody, no one's going to swap while they're dirty. So maybe your picture 4 here will be you cleaning, but not the fishbowl. So you'll stick a flap over and you're giving your shoes a good scrub, maybe with some polish. Okay. Then picture 5, you'll be trying to swap them. So you wouldn't have your picture of you holding out Norman in a fishbowl, trying to swap it for a puppy. You would stick your paper flap over with sellotape, and you would have you trying to swap your flat, sensible brown shoes for some jazzy pair that someone else might be wearing, okay? Maybe they flash when they walk, something like that. Picture 6, you would stick your flap on, okay? And I don't imagine that you'd be playing a tuba and your shoes would be listening, because that would be strange. So your picture flap in our model version we're doing together now might show you that you're actually, let's say that you are going on a walk, or even you are disco dancing, or it's sports day and you're running in a race. Now just imagine if you were trying to run in a race in high-heeled ruby fancy shoes, okay? It wouldn't be very good, would it? Alright, so you're actually pleased to have your brown sensible flat shoes because they're going to help you win the race, okay? So maybe that's what's on that picture 6 instead of the Norman picture underneath. Picture 7, okay, now this one's a bit trickier. He's in bed and he's afraid, okay, so we've got to try and think of something where you're really pleased to have those shoes. So, I don't know, maybe you could say that your cousin comes round and they really want to borrow a pair of your shoes to go outside, but when they look at your brown ones, they think, I'm not wearing those, I don't like the look of those. But when they go out in the other shoes, they end up, I don't know, tripping up because they're just too high, okay? So maybe you are so pleased to have your flat, sensible shoes on because you don't trip over, and your cousin does, okay? And then on to the last picture. You're going back to the shoe shop. Maybe you've got your receipt in your pocket and you're going to swap those shoes for something different. Might be a little tricky because you've been out in them now, but anyway, you're going back to the shoe shop instead of the pet shop in Not Norman, and you are looking to swap them for something else. So you're going to stick a picture on over the top of you at the shoe shop, so you might have a sign up with the shoe shop, okay? But when you get there and you look around, you realise that some of those red fancy shoes or those, I don't know, Spider-Man trainers aren't quite so good, okay? Maybe the Spider-Man might peel off if you jump in any puddles. Sorry, there's an aeroplane going over. Or maybe if you're wearing the red shiny ones, you realise that they're just not sensible to dance in or to win a race. So then you're happy with your shoes and you come away from the shoe shop keeping your brown sensible shoes. Okay? So remember, you're sticking little flappy pictures over the top of your Not Norman story map to create your own fictional story out of your imagination, but using the sort of pathway with the start, middle and end of Not Norman to help you create your story, okay? It's very similar to what we did for the Incredible Book Eating Boy when you guys came up with a plan for that, okay? Now, maybe on day 4, if you want to really challenge yourself, you could have a go at writing your own story. Now, it could be quite long with quite a lot of sentences, so if you feel like it's too much, maybe you can sit with your parents and tell them the story, but every now and then write maybe the 3rd sentence or the 5th sentence yourself, Okay, maybe if that's too tricky, you might want to write the odd word yourself. So get your mums, dads or brothers and sisters to write most of it, but then say, oh, actually I want to give that word a go. Maybe it's a common exception word, one of your keywords, and you know how to write that, so you want to write it. Or you're using your phoning flicky fingers and you can hear the sounds you need in the word, so you want to give it a go. So say, can I have a go writing this word now please, mum or dad? And then they will let you have a go at writing that word and then pass it back to them to carry on. Okay, so you've got three options there. One, you could get an adult to write it all for you. Okay. Two, you can get them to write most of it, but then there's the odd word that you might want to give it a go and have a go at writing yourself. Or three, you can have a go at writing the whole thing yourself, or at least sentences within that story, okay? Don't forget when you are writing, because I'd like to see them on tapestry, don't forget that capital letters is really good at the beginning of a sentence. Finger spaces are my most important between each word, okay? Remember, not between each letter, between each whole word. It makes it so much easier for me to read, and indeed for you to read back as well afterwards. And try and punctuate the end of your sentences with the right punctuation, okay? So probably most of the time it'll be a full stop for you guys, but if someone asks a question in your story, it will need to be a question mark, that one that looks like an ear with a dot at the bottom that we spoke about in phonics. There might even be the need to put in an exclamation mark, the long line with the dot at the bottom. If someone's being particularly commanding, or if they're shouting, or if they're a bit excited in your story, then use an exclamation mark. That would be fantastic. Remember your cursive writing if you are doing the writing yourself. Keep your beautiful cursive letters, not just for phonics, but also for your literacy writing, okay? Then, I believe, on day 5, you could have a go like we used to do in class when we wrote a story and we'd pull people up to act the story out. Maybe if you haven't got enough people at home, maybe you could use your teddy bears or your dolls to act out the story, okay? Really give it a go to read back your own writing if you can, because that's a really good thing in early years, to be able to do your own writing and then be able to read it back and work out what you've written, even a day after you wrote it, okay? If that's too tricky, then you can ask an adult to read out what's written while you act the teddy bears and the dolls. And I would love to see this on tapestry, so videos of your stories, either you reading them, you writing them, your pictures of your story maps on there, and certainly the plays at the end if you get that far. It'll be fantastic, okay? So tackle this over the forthcoming days. Okay, you've got 3 days next week that wouldn't be the Easter holidays, so have a really good go at doing it then, and I would love to look forward to seeing your pictures on tapestry for your literacy stories, okay? Don't forget to come up with a title as well. You obviously won't want to call your story Not Norman because it won't quite fit, so let's hear some rather exciting ideas for titles as well. And don't forget, when you're describing your characters or your shoes or whatever thing it is that you get given that you don't want to keep at first, think of ways of describing it. So don't just say shoes, tell me they're flat, brown, sensible shoes. So think of some good ways to describe those objects or people in your stories, okay? And I will really look forward to seeing them. So thanks very much for listening to our literacy lesson, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.